Annette, let me know when everybody's joined us and we'll get started.
I think we can go ahead and get started, Skip.
Okay, great. Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining me this morning, particularly at 8 o'clock, to learn about the Louisiana Bar Foundation and what it does to provide funding for civil legal aid and access to justice for the less fortunate of those among us who live in our state. Uh, this is our capital area tour, so I'll be talking mostly about the greater Baton Rouge area. And the activities of the foundation, while statewide, really do get focused on our community partnership panels. These are 9 regionally centered committees that are the eyes and ears of the foundation. They help us identify access to justice needs in their local communities, and they are invaluable to the work of the foundation. Our community partnership panel for the capital area is led by Linda Law Clark, who's I know is on our call this morning. And our board liaison for the panel is Carlene Green. So every panel has a board liaison, a board member who coordinates activities with the panel. And you see here the remaining members of our community partnership panel. All of these folks are volunteers. Many of them have served for many years. And at the end of the presentation, I will urge you to consider serving the Bar Foundation in some way. And a community partnership panel is a very, very good way for you to get involved in the work of the Bar Foundation. So, welcome to our community partnership panel members. And now for our program this morning, I want to talk with you a little about why the Louisiana Bar Foundation is not only good for the beneficiaries that it serves, but also good for the profession. Personally, I got involved in the Bar Foundation a number of years ago when my friend Mike Patterson asked me to serve on as a subcommittee member on the grants committee for the Bar Foundation. As you might suspect, the grants committee considers applications for grants from the Bar Foundation and makes some decisions on who receives grants and in what amounts. And frankly, up until that time, I did not know much about the Bar Foundation. So I'm grateful to Mike for his introduction to the good work of the foundation. And then since that time, I've had the pleasure of serving on the grants committee, and then more recently as a member of the board and an officer. Um, Anyone I think that you know who is involved in the Bar Foundation or the work of the foundation or any of its committees or its board will tell you how personally rewarding the work is. You get to serve with a number of very committed, mission focused, dedicated, hardworking volunteers, all of whom share the mission of the foundation. And so the foundation is worthwhile efforts, worthwhile work for members of our community, our legal community. And again, I'm going to urge you at the end of this presentation to get involved. Now, before I get too far down into this, we're going to have a poll. So here is poll number 1. Are you a fellow of the Louisiana Bar Foundation? And a fellow is usually a lawyer who is participating and supporting financially the foundation and or participates in other ways. So please take a minute to answer this first uh, poll. Great. I hope most of you said yes, and that those of you who said no will seriously consider becoming a fellow. So now let me talk to you a little bit about what the foundation is and what it does and who it serves. Um, the main mission of the Louisiana Bar Foundation is to fund civil legal aid and promote access to justice. So we're not involved on the criminal indigent defender work at all. This is strictly on the civil side, not only providing funding direct services, we don't provide them, but we fund them, and promoting access to justice. And you see here from our mission statement, it's pretty robust. Um, to honor and improve our system of justice by funding, developing, or otherwise promoting efforts which enhance the legal profession, increase public understanding of the legal system, that's our education function, and advancing the reality of equal justice under the law, which encompasses both access to justice and funding organizations that provide direct civil legal aid services. So here's a little bit about what we do. The Bar Foundation is the largest funder of civil legal aid in the state. And sources of those funds include the interest on lawyers' trust account monies that come to the Bar Foundation under Rule 1.15 of the Rules of Professional Conduct. And we have a number of other grants that we receive, a number of other sources of funding that we receive, some of which we'll talk about in a few minutes. And the purpose then of the foundation is to use those funds through grants and other direct educational processes to fund civil legal aid to make sure that everyone in Louisiana, regardless of background or income level, have access to civil legal services. And all of you on the call, I believe, have an appreciation for how important that can be to the average citizen, and frustrating it can be when the average citizen does not have access to those services. And some of the recipients here you see women, children, elderly, people with disabilities, disaster victims. That's a particularly important topic right now. Those facing their loss of homes or newly unemployed. So we do a fair amount of employment related support, and then veterans and military families. All of this goes to the heart of the health, safety, and security of many of our citizens and our families. So, what is civil legal aid? At its core, it is legal assistance without charge provided to people who qualify for those services who are facing non-criminal civil legal challenges. So while we all know that access to a lawyer in a criminal case is a fundamental constitutional right, that is not necessarily true in most civil cases. So we fill that gap where there's no constitutional right to representation in a civil case. Our grantees provide those services. And as I noted a minute ago, the range of issues that are presented to some of our grantees is very broad, and some of it depends upon what's happening in the world at any given moment. For example, right now, housing and eviction practice is very important. Disaster recovery is very important. And so having access to resources that will aid those folks who are qualified and eligible at this particular time in those areas is very, very important. Um, Disasters increase the need for civil legal aid. We know this all too well in South Louisiana, dating back to our pre-Katrina experience. Some of you may remember the issues dealing with title to immovable property and the Road Home program that led us to develop some programs to assist people in clearing title to their homes, which led to some legislation that made the process of successions simpler and cheaper. When people get displaced, that creates additional landlord-tenant problems. We also know from the so-called lockdown that when you confine people in small quarters for extended periods of time, that is not always a good thing for everyone. And so we have noted an increase in domestic violence cases, which impacts children, and then it also impacts the economic stability of those family units. And so when that happens, when disasters faces the civil legal aid component of what the Bar Foundation and its grantees do becomes particularly important, and our partners find themselves working even harder as we see more and more families in need of civil legal aid to recover from the impact of natural disasters. Right now, I'd like to share with you a success story. It's one that I think you will find touching, and it involves one of our legal aid grantees, a provider who helped a North Shore family with a child custody matter.
AJ, he's my sister's son. OCS had taken AJ away from her twice, actually. And she has her own mental illnesses and just really wasn't fit to raise him. When he pulled up his shirt, there were marks, bruises, like lashes all over him. I said, I have a 3-bedroom house. I have 3 children. Me and my husband been together 20 years. I want to try to get AJ. No criminal background. We can do this. Just as hard as Catherine fought, OCS was throwing every excuse in the world. When I tell you, Catherine fought like no other. It was hell. But we did it. She did it. Let me tell you, she did it. Now, when he was in that care, he would fight teachers, suspended every time he turned around. Since I've had him, he's never been suspended, never had a detention. His grades went from all Fs to Bs. AJ is extremely lovable. He loves to be hugged and held, and whatever will get you to smile makes him smile. He's here, and he knows that somebody loves him. So I'm not gonna turn my back on you. You're not going anywhere no more. You're here.
This is just one example of the great work that our grantees do every day through their dedication to our mission and to their desire to help those less fortunate. And we thank Mrs. Alicia Breon for sharing this inspiring story. One can only wonder what might have happened to AJ, but for Catherine's dedication to her client and to achieving this result. So I mentioned a few minutes ago that the Bar Foundation is a funder of civil legal aid through a number of grantees. It does not provide these services directly, but it has a robust partnership of robust network of partnerships that have been established for a long time. And these folks, these grantee organizations, serve those among us who are in most need of legal services and who cannot afford to pay for them. Since 1989, I am pleased to report that we've awarded nearly $94 million in grants to these organizations that provide these direct services to their clients. So the grants that the Bar Foundation awards can be broken down into different categories, and this is really the way our grantee organizations are organized. They all fit into one, maybe sometimes more of these categories. And the right-hand side, you see the impact in the Baton Rouge region for 2021. Anything ranging from children's legal services, and that's where the grantee organization might provide direct representation to children, to the domestic violence programs around the state, to pro bono projects, and I know all of you are familiar with those locally and around the state. We have a loan repayment assistance program. The Children in Need of Care funding is a program that operates under the supervision of the Supreme Court with some very specialized and talented lawyers who represent children who are being placed into foster care. And you can imagine the challenge of representing children in those circumstances. The Bar Foundation, through its grants to the legal services corporations, provides a significant amount of funding to support the efforts of the lawyers who work in that arena. So let me comment just a minute about the funding that has gone to the Baton Rouge area, the capital area region. And if you just take a look at the list, it's a total of nearly $1.8 million. Some of these organizations, no doubt you are familiar with, and maybe you already participate in them. And if that is true, I thank you for your service there. But to the Baton Rouge Bar Foundation and the Children's Advocacy Center, Catholic Charities, which does a lot of support of immigrants, Shea Hope, Frontline Legal Services, the Justice and Accountability Center of Louisiana, Metro Centers for Community Advocacy, the New Orleans AIDS Task Force, and Southeast Louisiana Legal Services, which is one of the larger recipients of grants through the Bar Foundation. And I'll talk a little bit more about them in just a little bit. But you can see it's a robust range of services that are provided. And incidentally, all of these organizations are thoroughly vetted and meet the highest qualifications and compliance with regulations dealing with provisions of legal services and services nonprofit organizations. At the beginning of the program, I mentioned the Community Partnership Panel. And so what we do, in addition to soliciting the partnership panel's inputs about where we might find some needs for civil legal aid and for funding, we also allocate money every year to each of the community partnership panels to provide for them to make decisions about providing direct support for projects within the mission of the foundation that they deem to be worthwhile. And some of the money from the capital area region CPP for last year went to the Baton Rouge Bar Foundation, to Shea Hope, to Louisiana Appleseed. You may be familiar with Appleseed. It is a policy and outreach organization. And then to the Oral History Project. And many of you may not know, but the Bar Foundation has for a long time supported oral histories, interviews of some of our more distinguished lawyers and judges. And those are all hung on our website. So I urge you to take a look and see who we've interviewed. And those interviews can be very entertaining, but also very interesting and help us understand where we came from. So let's pause for a minute now. We're at poll number 2. This one's pretty easy. We just want to know if you want to be entered into our raffle to win a prize. So the answer there ought to be yes. I'm tempted to hum the theme from Final Jeopardy, but I think you got this figured out. These are Apple AirPods. So please just answer this poll and we'll put you in the running for our raffle. Okay, hope one of you will be the happy winner. I mentioned funding sources briefly earlier in the presentation. I want to tell you a little bit more about where the Bar Foundation gets its money. The primary source is, of course, interest on lawyers' trust accounts. I think probably all of you are familiar with that process. Lawyers' trust accounts are bank accounts that hold money that belong to people other than lawyers for the most part, clients, settlement funds, escrow accounts. And by rule, the Supreme Court has directed that the interest on those accounts inures to the benefit of the Bar Foundation for the purposes of supporting its mission. And we have hundreds of banks around the state that participate in this program. That is the largest single source of funding that passes through the Bar Foundation. And it comprises the bulk of the money that we award to our grantees. We also receive an appropriation from the state of Louisiana for the Children in Need of Care function that operates through the legal services corporations, both Southeast Louisiana Legal Services and Acadiana Legal Services. And that is an appropriation that we have taken over from the Supreme Court. And we provide that money directly to the legal services corporations for the representation of these children. Side prey money, where there's a class action settlement and money left over, we encourage lawyers who participate in those cases to make recommendations to the presiding judge to have the excess money that won't go back to the parties delivered to the Bar Foundation. Recently, the Supreme Court authorized a portion of pro hoc vice fees that out-of-state lawyers pay for the purpose of limited admission here to inure to the benefit of the Bar Foundation. That generated, believe it or not, more than $120,000 in 2019. More recently, the sometimes vexing problem of lawyers being unable to identify or have claimed money that is left in their trust accounts. So though that money essentially is cheats to the Bar Foundation, we hold it and with the obligation to refund it to the right claimant. But we have the ability to use that money in the meantime. And then we receive money from family foundations and other foundations around the country that support the mission of the Bar Foundation. And then I'm pleased to let you know that for the last 2 years, the legislature has seen fit to return to the state budget an appropriation of $500,000 each year to provide for the general support of civil legal aid. We found ourselves for the preceding 8 years as the only state in the country that did not provide something in its general appropriation bill to support civil legal aid. In just a minute, I'm going to tell you about poverty in Louisiana, and you will see, I hope, why that is appropriate. So we're facing a census, and I think the census at the end of this year is going to confirm again that Louisiana's poverty rates are among the highest. We have 1,800,000 people out of a population of a little over 4 million that are eligible for free civil legal aid. That's an economic test to determine whether or not most of our grantees can provide civil legal aid to their potential clients. That's pretty close to half the population of the state. And in the capital area region alone, about right at 250,000 people are potentially eligible. And it's sometimes the kinds of vexing problems that are presented to our grantees, a civil legal aid issue, eviction, employment, might be the only thing between families' ability to stay together and be stable, and some other consequences that are not nearly as desirable. So we have a pressing need for continued investments in civil legal aid, and what I hope you will help me do is spread the word. We are about to embark on an education campaign that I'm going to talk about in a minute to help the decision makers and influencers in our state understand this problem, and hopefully they will help us spread the message that civil legal aid is an essential component of philanthropy and designed to improve the economic, social, health conditions, standard of living for low-income people in our communities. So what happens in terms of economic impact? You might be asking yourself, so other than the intangible benefits that I just talked about, what else happens? Well, we now know that for every $1 that gets invested in civil legal aid, there's a return on that investment of $9.13 in immediate and long-term benefits, mostly reducing reliance on government and the judiciary system. So if you look at that total, it results in about $95 million. And we were, frankly, that was a little bit surprising to a lot of people. And when we shared it with our friends in the legislature, I think they were equally surprised. And when you start thinking about reforms dealing with criminal justice and reentry into society and the financial burden that can sometimes have on state government, you can see that this return on investment is an important component of what we do and what our message must be. More than 40 grantees that provide services contributed to the analysis that we resourced, and the findings clearly to me show that the money we spend on civil legal aid through our civil legal aid providers first are well spent. They're an investment in our communities, and they deliver unmistakable economic returns to the state economy as a whole. This is not the most important part of our message, obviously, but it is a crucial part of what we need to make sure the deciders in our state know as we ask them for enhanced support to these programs. So if you take a look at volume, just to take a look in 2018 to see what our grantees worked on. Nearly 23,000 separate legal matters in 100 types of problems. And you see again here the variety of legal matters that the grantees, our civil legal aid providers, provide. You can imagine what a substantial impact that has. So if we're handling 23,000 legal matters, we're touching 23,000 individuals or families. And I would go out on a small limb here and say, most of the time we're able to help them to some extent. Not all times getting everything that they need or want, but we get pretty good results through our grantees. So let's talk a little bit about strategic planning. I want to just let you know that every 2 years or so, the foundation in the exercise of what we believe is good government visits and revalidates its strategic plan. And we just did that last Friday, and we'll be sharing the strategic plan with you all very soon. But we want to make sure that what we're doing and how we're approaching our work to support our mission meets the current economic and social environment. Things have changed a whole lot since the last time we did this. And then we're making one thing that I do want you to know about, I'm going to talk about in just a second. Technology. We all know the impact technology has had on our lives during the pandemic. Well, technology is making a huge impact on the services that our grantees are able to share, to extend to their clients. And one of those is the Lagniappe Law Lab, or our Louisiana Civil Legal Navigator, which is a technology-focused organization serving the civil justice community. And this is an amazing tool that will provide a resource for people to directly access, get information about some of the more vexing problems that we see them coming to us with the hope that they can, in some instances, actually help themselves. So the lab is a home for a statewide tech program that lets our low-income individuals access through a library or any place where they have a computer with web access to get to the most appropriate legal resource to help them. It's an intelligent technology platform. We just launched it formally within the last couple of weeks, and right now it encompasses 4 areas of law that are most commonly encountered by our grantees' clients, divorce, child custody, private landlord, tenant law, and unpaid wages. I would urge you to access the Lagniappe Law Lab at some time and just to browse through it to see what it does. We think this is going to greatly expand access to justice. It will allow some people to get their questions answered. For some, it will refer them to an attorney because the problem is too complex perhaps for them to handle by themselves and maybe not appropriate for them to handle by themselves. And we're also looking for other subject matter that we can begin to include in this resource. We know there are others out there, and we're interested in identifying them and then getting input from the members of the legal community about how to structure the resource so that it best answers questions posed by potential clients. Great tool for us, and I hope you'll Google it and then log on and just browse through it a little bit and see what it can do. Okay, so I want to share with you another legal aid, civil legal aid success story. This one illustrates how our grantees helped a family in Louisiana stay in their home.
My family means the most to me, but as far as what my home means to me is, you know, it's like it's our base of operations. I just started a new job. Unfortunately, I got an infection in my leg. Basically, that was part of my job in retail management, was to stand all day long, and I couldn't do that. I'd been paying on my mortgage for about 7.5 years. Always on time, always faithful. So I was trying to get ahead of the game and tell them, I'm going to miss a payment. I'm trying to be proactive, like they always say in all the credit commercials. They didn't want to talk. The sheriff came to my house with the papers and, served his papers at the house. That's how far it had gotten. And in the last kind of act of desperation, I just Googled in their free legal service. Crystal had the law pulled up on her computer screen there, and we were talking to the mortgage company on the phone, and she's telling them that this wasn't a choice for them whether to do it or not. It was required by law because of how the mortgage is handled through Fannie Mae. And she cited them, the chapter and passage of where it was, that they could look it up too. And she said, I'll send you a copy of it. I'll email it to you. There was this hand put over the phone on the mortgage company's end, the ruffling of papers and the muffled sound, and could we have a few more minutes? And, I knew then, I had someone in my corner now. After we had filed that second application, it came back approved. The one thing it did for me was to inspire me to do something on my own. So I shopped around. I was able to get insurance to a local company here in Thibodaux. Between what Crystal did for me and what the insurance did for me, it almost cut our mortgage payment in half. We can pay our other bills. We can start getting caught up on things now. I don't know where my family would be. I have a wife and 2 sons. We have no idea where we'd be today if it wasn't for Crystal keeping us in our home. My name is Robert Bunting. I have a wife named Karen, and I have 2 boys that went to high school and going to college here. We've lived in Thibodaux for about 8 years now. We don't want to move. We want to continue living here. My kids want to continue living here. It's a great town to live in.
I think you'd have to agree that's just a great example of how a dedicated attorney trying to help someone can impact not just one but 4 lives. And we thank Mr. Bunning for sharing that story with us. So we're about to wrap up here, but I want to ask you to think about how you can help and how you can get involved. So membership in the Bar Foundation is very simple. You can be a lawyer or a judge, and we're actually and law professors, and we're actually working on some thoughts about how to expand our membership beyond just the legal community. If you become a fellow of the Bar Foundation, you are joining what, in my estimation, is a distinguished network of dedicated professionals who are supportive of the Bar Foundation mission. And you can see here some of the activities that we engage in, not the least of which is our annual gala, at which we recognize a distinguished jurist, a distinguished lawyer, and a distinguished law professor. And we present to a deserving recipient the Caliguero Justice Award, which recognizes statewide impact on our justice system. Most distinguished award named after our former Chief Justice Pascal Caliguero. The organization directly impacts the legal profession because it furthers what I believe should be one of the professional hallmarks of what we do, and that is to support access to the legal system for all citizens. So, why is the Bar Foundation good for the profession? You might be thinking to yourself, this is where I came in, and you're right. You all know that lawyers do great service through their work of helping people every day. The Bar Foundation is the visible public service organization for our profession, and it brings members of our profession together to maximize efforts to better our profession, our communities, and in so doing, I think we also better ourselves. So membership in the Bar Foundation, being a fellow in the Bar Foundation, is a statement of your commitment to fairness and access to justice for all of our citizens. Before I ask you to answer this one, I want to just tell you that on the call today, a number of our board members have joined us. All of our community partnership panel members have joined us. The executive director of the Southeast Louisiana Legal Services Corporation. Sorry, Laura, I butchered that, but welcome, Laura Tuggle. Her organization does outstanding work for its clients and is one of our major grantees. Now, on to checkpoint 3. This is the last poll. We have a 1-hour version of this CLE, and if you would be interested in presenting this to a group in the future, please just let us know. We'll send you the materials. I promise you I won't come, and so you don't have to listen to me again. We'll let you do this because that's where it's most effective. So please answer the poll. And I wanted to also thank you for taking some time this morning. I know you all have other things to do. This is vitally important to our state, and I hope you will accept our invitation to become a fellow and an active fellow in the Louisiana Bar Foundation. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Very much appreciated. Hope to see all of you very soon. Thank you for being with us.